Hello, my name is Ted Elliott. Welcome to the TED Talk for November. I want to thank everybody for joining me in the series. We've been doing these now for 12 months and it's been a lot of fun. What I thought we would do today is really talk about sentiment and where the market's headed. So before we get started, I thought I always start with these is to thank everybody for joining us. I'd also like to thank our investors, Tribune Company, IBM, Tegna, Kaplan, and OPV. And I'd like to just take a second to talk a little about the job science mission. So it's our core belief at Job Science that the economy is changing and the workforce is changing. And the workforce is mainly changing because the population is aging and the number of people who are between 25 and 35 aren't backfilling the people who are 55 to 65 in our economy. And we believe that what this is starting to do is create a gig economy in which people are looking for more ways to control how they work, when they work, where they work, and what they work on. We think that traditional ways of filling jobs, both in corporate direct hire and in staffing, are no longer filling the needs of the consumer of jobs, which is the job seeker. And so Job Science's mission is really focused around how do we make the business of recruiting, whether you're in corporate or staffing, more effective? How do we bring the tools to you that will make your day better? So what I've tried to do in today's TED Talk is bring three people from my management team in to ask them some questions about what's going on in the economy. But I thought before we did that, and before I introduce them, what we might want to do is take a little trip down memory lane. So I'm not sure any of you guys have the Job Science sentiment surveys, but we've connected with everyone via sentiment surveys throughout the year. And it's kind of interesting to see month by month how that sentiment has changed. And so I thought what we'd do is just take a second to look at some of these sentiment surveys, and then I'm going to invite my panel up to talk a little about what we think is going to happen in 2018 and what trends we're seeing in the marketplace. We started off doing these sentiment surveys at the beginning of January of 2017, and we were really interested to see at the outset of the year that the primary concern that recruiters had was that they already thought in January that it was going to be hard for them to find enough skilled talent to address demand. It was clear from the initial surveys that people were not concerned about the ability to pull labor into the U.S. market. Trump had not announced yet that he was going to have more strict controls over immigration. And there was no emphasis or really focus from the majority of the people we surveyed to have any plan to try and bring older workers back to work to address any gap in supply. So it was a general sentiment at the time that basically it was just going to be hard to do your job. And people weren't really sure about what the new administration was going to do in terms of impact their business. In February, people started to realize that something was changing in the economy, and we saw a 50% drop in the number of people who felt that Trump would make recruiting easier. We also saw that there was a big impact when the Trump administration came in from a feeling that it was going to get harder and harder to move labor globally. And there was a decrease in the concern that the gig economy would impact people. And there was generally a decrease in the fear that people weren't going to find enough people, because I think there was a lot of uncertainty back in February as to what was actually happening in the economy, and was the new Trump administration going to create a damper on economic growth. In March, everyone went from not being concerned about finding labor to once again being afraid that they were going to run out of skilled labor. In fact, they felt that the gig economy was back on. They felt that they were going to have a harder time finding contractors. And generally, there was an interest in artificial intelligence that kept building. But again, it was up and down from being in February not very sure to being in March feeling bullish again. In April, it must have been raining because all of a sudden people were very neutral in terms of their sentiment about the economy, or concerned that they weren't going to be able to find people, and everything seemed to sort of be uncertain. From looking at our sentiment back in May, it seems like we continue to slip in terms of concern about needing to find people. Generally, it looked like people weren't as concerned as they had been back in February. Still no plans to try and figure out how to bring older workers back into the economy. and people became a little less concerned that the gig economy was going to be a problem for them. And maybe this was in part because this is when Uber's problems started to kick off in the economy, and because people associate the gig economy with Uber, it seemed like May was a slippage. And what we also saw was concern that the Trump administration was going to have a negative impact on people. Seemed to be coming to an end, but in general there was still a lot of uncertainty. Once we hit June, all of a sudden we saw that there was a boost in the number of people who indicated that skilled labor was going to run out. And compared to May, there was a 12% drop in people's lack of confidence that they were going to be hiring more contractors. So basically people thought, yeah, we're going to hire more people and it's going to get harder to find them. But the fear of the gig economy kept on slipping. And I think that's really from a lack of connection of the concept of the gig economy with the actual labor markets. So while people think the market's changing and it's going to be harder to find people, they weren't necessarily sure that everyone was running off to Lyft and Uber to fill those jobs. And I think that's probably pretty accurate, because those jobs generally are not necessarily hitting our highest skilled labor populations, those that are leaving the economy at an accelerated rate. We got into July and even more people felt that there was going to be we were going to run out of skilled labor. And almost 10% of the folks who were responding to our survey told us they thought they were still going to need to hire more contractors in 2017. So we started to see a pretty solid trend and a concern that people weren't going to be able to find the labor, that demand was going to exceed the amount of skilled, and that people were really going to struggle to fill jobs. Oddly enough, as we hit August, we all of a sudden saw a drop in the number of people who thought they were going to hire more contractors. And for the first time, we started seeing people telling us that they actually were going to start planning on trying to recruit older, more skilled labor. And we even saw a slight boost in the number of people who thought that Trump might actually make recruiting easier. So again, a lot of fluidity this whole year in the sentiment that we're getting back from recruiters as we were surveying them about what they thought was going on in the market. The interest in recruiting older workers kind of dropped back down 6% as we surveyed people in September. We saw a drop in the people who thought they were going to hire more contracts. We saw the gig economy continue to just fall off from the standpoint of people thinking that it was going to be a threat to their existing business models. And we saw a decrease in the number of people who thought that by year end they weren't going to be able to fill their jobs, almost a 23.5% decline. And that's a pretty big drop. Now, is that because we were sort of hitting the end of the year cycle and people had a much clearer vision of what was going to happen between now and the end of the year? Perhaps. But it was not following the trend of the summer where everyone was concerned they weren't going to be able to get their jobs done. So the last survey that we've completed, because we're still working on the November survey, was October. And in October, we continued to see plunge in the number of respondents who felt that they weren't going to be able to find enough skilled labor to fill their jobs. And again, our conclusion was that that's because we're coming to the end of the year and people have a clearer sight within the last 2 months of what they're going to be able to get done and not done. But we saw that they were also no longer really concerned that Trump administration was going to make it so much harder to bring in international talent. Again, this piece about going up against older workers keeps on going up and down, but it went up 9% in the last month. And the number of people who thought they were going to hire more people went up by 14.2%. So by the end of this year, where we're headed is an economy that people still think is growing, where they're going to hire more people, and they're not necessarily as concerned that they're not going to be able to figure out how to do it. And in large part, I think that's because there's been a lot of instability as the U.S. economy has been changing. But I think what we've seen, at least over the last 60 days, is as you've seen these growth numbers coming out from the government, there seems to be some consensus that hiring is going to keep happening. So I think this is a good break point for me to bring in the panel, let them introduce themselves, and tell you, what we're seeing in the market. My panelists today are Sabine Gillert, David Freeman, and Terry Elliott. And I thought they could do a little better job of describing to you who they are and what they do at Job Science.
My name is Sabine Gillert, and I am the Vice President of Customer Success at Job Science. I've been in the recruitment space for over 17 years, and I spend a lot of my time right now listening to customer needs and how they achieve success using the Job Science product.
I'm David Freeman. I'm the Vice President of Professional Services at Job Science. Prior to getting involved in the recruiting and software staffing space, I was a recruiter and director of recruiting myself, and I spent a number of years placing people in a variety of different positions.
Dave, what do you do at Job Science?
I lead the professional services team here, and we're responsible for not only ensuring that our newest customers are successfully implemented on the product, taking advantage of all that we have to offer and getting great user adoption from their teams, but also helping existing customers enhance their processes and take advantage of all that the Job Science system and the Salesforce platform have to offer.
Okay, and we have one more guest to introduce themselves.
I am Terry Elliott. I'm the Chairman and Chief Data Scientist at Job Science. I would like to briefly describe what I'm working on and the changes that we see on the horizon that will impact our customers. I should start by mentioning that I have a background in mathematics, statistics, and quantitative methods. Many of the methods that are being incorporated in today's artificial intelligence tools and applications. My management experience has been in planning, corporate development, and finance, although almost all in rapidly growing technology companies. I also was a partner in an executive search firm, and I have recruited in practically every job I've ever held.
Dad, it's exciting that you're working with me. I've really enjoyed it. I'd like you to tell the audience a little about the special program you're working on here at Job Science.
I'm currently working with a group of the company's leading customers on prototyping, developing, and testing a major new planning and management system that is currently being called Goal Achiever. The new system will provide our clients with goal management tools and libraries for them to define goals and key results for their businesses. The new system will use the data produced by Job Science systems to track results and forecast outcomes. Although Job Science continues to introduce AI-based improvements in its core systems, like the candidate scoring tool that we just released, the Goal Achiever system will be the first complete application from Job Science that incorporates artificial intelligence to recommend corrective action for our clients.
Sabine, you're in the market. You're over there in London this week. What are you hearing from customers? What do they want from Job Science?
Customers are talking a lot about increasing demands related to managing data and candidates. They want to ensure compliance, especially with GDPR approaching, and they want tools that will help them manage the outreach to existing and former candidates to help them re-engage.
Sabine, when you think about how they market to candidates, what are you seeing is the big ask?
Customers are also looking to create more sophisticated portals with rich content, as well as the more conventional functionality of job search and applications.
Are people looking for a suite of applications?
We are also seeing demand for end-to-end, front-to-back solutions, rather than integrations between packages from different vendors.
Customers are really looking for a solution that can streamline their processes and help them hire or place people faster. They're looking for a system that kind of can do as much of their business process as possible so that they can save time and not have to bounce back and forth between multiple systems.
The customers that have participated in the Goal Achiever development program have made the point that they do not just want to apply this to managing one aspect of their business like recruiting. They manage many activities, and they want to apply such a potentially powerful tool to managing each of these activities. Managing contingent workers, for example, has become an important activity for many employers, and corporate recruiters also recognize that managing applicant marketing activities is an important aspect of their job.
So from your perspective, is the system expanding way beyond recruitment at this point in terms of what we're doing for customers and what they're demanding from the system?
Business development is an important activity for many recruitment agencies, and project management apps are an important aspect of managing professional services firms. As a result of this feedback, the Goal Achiever system is being designed to capture data from any Salesforce object or field so that the system can draw on data from Salesforce and the apps on the App Exchange, as well as data from the Job Science Forms product. Anything that the customer needs to manage their business in any system that they're currently using.
Sabine, you heard me walk through the sentiment of the last year with our audience. What trends are you seeing? You've been in this space now for 17 years, a lot of experience globally at TMP. What are you seeing?
Well, with an aging population and fewer people entering the job market, candidates have more choice. They have higher expectations these days as well. This can benefit agencies through higher turnover and more placements, but it can also make it harder to attract candidates. In an effort to attract those candidates, many companies are focusing on passive candidates, those ones who are not actively looking for a new role, but who could be tempted by an interesting opportunity with good career development.
I'd say right now there's a real high demand for skilled labor, especially with certain positions like those in tech being very, very competitive. Companies who can really do the best job of identifying and engaging the talent will really have the best opportunity for success.
Sabine, you've been in Europe this week. Anything that you're seeing happen in the UK?
In the UK, we're starting to see Brexit is having an effect with many of those migrant workers returning home. This is creating staffing shortages in a number of areas, especially hospitality, industrial, healthcare. And many of these jobs would be hard to fill at current rates with local workers.
Terry, you're our data scientist. What are you seeing as a trend that is concerning to you?
The most important trend to a data scientist is to be aware of what is happening to the data. All artificial intelligence is all about the data, not the algorithms. Let me provide some examples of why data is my concern. First, we are witnessing a consolidation of recruitment data. This is an important trend, particularly in terms of what Google Jobs, Microsoft LinkedIn, and Recruit's Indeed system, and what these companies plan to do with the data to create competitive advantage. Second major concern about data is the European GDPR program, which goes live in the second quarter of next year. This allows any individual to purge all of their contact records from commercial use. And it's also worth noting that Google Jobs is not in Europe, I think, because they don't want to interrupt anything that stops them from mining the very rich recruiting data. Third, and it's no surprise to anyone that's used user-provided systems that rely on user-provided data, is that the data is incomplete and inaccurate. These are really two kind of words. The point is that artificial intelligence has to begin relying more on developing pattern recognition from machine-produced data. What do I mean? Data like when a job order was created, when an application was created, the submittal creation date, the interview creation date, the offer creation date. These all help estimate the likelihood of a placement in this example. The point is that you can have a pattern here where there's a shelf life, and beyond a certain date, the job order no longer has value. The submittal no longer has value. The application no longer has value. So data is the issue, and there are activities underway that will impact the availability of data that we will use in our programs, both good and bad.
It's really interesting where the data is going, and the fact that there are trends that are all melding together that are really going to start seeing themselves in 2018. I thought what I do now is shift a little to the question of, do we think the demand for labor is really going up? Are we following the sentiment survey, or do we have a different feeling? So I thought I'd start with Sabine.
We have seen a steady user seat increase across our client base in the last part of this year, especially amongst our staffing customers. This definitely suggests that the agency market is thriving.
in my opinion, demand is going up because of the global economy is growing, and many local economies are approaching full employment status. We have record numbers of baby boomers that are retiring, and the growth of the contingent workforce is also adding to the strain on recruitment. As a result, recruiting systems have to continue to be improved to allow recruiters more contact time to concentrate on what they do best. And we have to be able to increase recruiter productivity. They simply have to manage more placements in the future. We think this is an important area where artificial intelligence can contribute to improving the recruitment process, and it's certainly an area we're concentrating on.
I think we're going to see a continued demand for growth or growth in the demand in recruiting over the next a couple of years even. So right now, I don't see it slowing down. There's been a high demand for skilled labor, and I think we're going to continue to see that going forward.
Really interesting feedback, guys, in terms of what you're seeing in the marketplace. I know that our pipeline here at Job Science and our plans at Job Science have been greatly influenced by the sentiment surveys that we've done, specifically around an interest in analytics and artificial intelligence driving the recruitment process. And in fact, this is why Terry has taken on this role within the company. I know that Sabine had to drop off the call because she is in London, but I wanted to see if I could ask Terry and Dave if they could comment a little on what they see coming up in 2018, and a little after that with my own predictions, and give everyone a sense of where we're going with our product.
So what are my predictions for 2018? I think it's going to be a great time to be working at Job Science. Our customers' businesses are going to be strong, and we're going to be releasing some great new products. If we do our jobs well, the design of these new systems and the embedded artificial intelligence logic will allow these systems to rapidly evolve to support broader sets of our clients' needs. It's just a great time to be here.
I believe we are going to see continued demand for skilled talent and a shortage of the qualified people to fill those positions. Companies will really need to be nimble in order to find the people that they need and to fill their clients' positions. Those companies that can do that will have the best opportunity for success.
So my own feeling about 2018 is that it is going to be a great time to be a recruiter. And I think this really follows from the demographics that the 25 to 35-year-old population is just not keeping up with the 55 to 65-year-old population that is simply leaving the economy. And my biggest concern in 2018 is that the gap between the number of available people and the number of jobs is going to really impact economic growth. Because if we can't have the people to do the work, we're going to start seeing an impact on our ability to get work done. And that's going to ultimately drive everyone starting to look in 2018 at utilization. How do I keep the people that I have as long as possible? How do I make sure that when I have them, they're doing as much work or they're scheduled to work as much as possible, because I'm going to run out of resources. And there's going to be a new emphasis, I believe, for recruiters to focus on making sure that when they find people, they keep them. And I think that's something we've always heard, but it really hasn't impacted the staffing industry as much as it's been a mantra in the corporate world over the last couple of decades. At least as long as I've been in the recruiting space, back to 1994. So what do I see in 2018 for Job Science? I think you're going to see 2 new products come out in 2018. One that will be a suite specifically built for people who are in the business of recruiting. You're going to see a second product that we're going to come out with that is focused on AI and analytics. And I think you'll see towards the middle of the year a major upgrade through our next release in the recruiting world, where we're bringing a lot of improvements that we've been working on with the National Health Trust in the UK, with Kelly Services around scheduling, with a whole series of our customers to really improve the recruiting experience. And those things are going to allow you to do things like federated search, scheduling meetings, almost like you're using a Calendly tool, better email tools, better scoring. And what we've really been trying to do is listen to the feedback of our users, because we're convinced that more than ever in 2018, you're going to be facing a lot more pressure. Pressure to find people, pressure to fill jobs. So I want to thank everybody for joining us here for our November TED Talk. Hopefully this has been useful and given you some insight into what we're seeing in the market and where we think the market's headed. And I really encourage you to continue participating in our sentiment surveys and be part of the job science community. So thank you so much, and have a great holiday season.